Friends, the last video was about assembling this armored shoebox, also known as A7V, the first German tank. This model comes with a full interior and, well, at least some of it will be visible when the model is finished. See, there's plenty of stuff to paint, and that's what we're gonna focus on today, because otherwise I can't finish the assembly, not to mention painting and weathering of the exterior. And to paint it comfortably, I'll have to disassemble pretty much everything. Here's how it looks after I washed every part in soapy water. And this is gonna be my first interior in, I think ever, so let's give it a shot. And speaking of shots, the first one is gonna be a coat of primer. My usual all-time favorite Mr. Surfacer Black. I use this primer as a foundation for all my paintworks, but I think it's gonna be especially important in this case. Using a black base allows you to be more efficient when airbrushing color gradients, or fake shadows and highlights. And where else would you appreciate artificial lighting if not in a tank's interior, correct? With this dark and smooth foundation, I can move on to actual painting. The first color is a mixture of these paints. My goal was a desaturated green color, and as always, it was all mixed without any ratios. I couldn't find any verifiable source that would explain what colors were used in the A7V. Some claim the floor was white, others grey or green, but the last option seems the most plausible to me. I wasn't sure how much of the interior was gonna be visible. Spoilers, it won't be much, that's for sure. So I thought it would be a nice testbed for airbrushing and some stronger, vivid contrasts. I kept making the paint significantly lighter with each layer. At the same time, I didn't want to spend too much time here, so I only went with 2 highlight layers. Because any type of contrast might be beneficial here, I made a few gradients that would visually separate the individual floor panels. You know, it's just one of the many ways how to approach a tank's interior floor. Moving on, the next color is gonna be white, but actually not too white. I started with a very light gray because you won't do much highlighting if you start with pure white. This is where the black primer makes the biggest difference, as it gives a clean, cold look. Then, according to my tradition, I added more white into the paint and added some textured gradients. This mottled style of painting has 2 main advantages for me. It looks more interesting because of the subtle texture, or not so subtle depending on your style, and it doesn't require any masking, so you can quickly add contrast between details and panels without messing around with masking tape. Pure white was added to the internal construction that actually holds the armor plates together. Some models, or parts of models, are more suitable for this approach than others, and interior walls painted in white are probably the best canvas for such effects. Here's the result, and although most of the surfaces won't be seen again after I close the interior, the process doesn't take too much time. Larger details, such as these massive radiators, were masked and painted with the same post-shading method. Looking back, I might have pulled it off without masking because it's not like they're gonna be visible, but here's where the airbrush can be a huge help, as it can bring out details that would be otherwise impossible with brushes and, let's say, washes. The frame that holds the entire engine compartment together was too small and complex for airbrushing, so here I went with the paintbrush and AK's 3rd generation acrylics. No shading here, but I think it's gonna be alright. Okay, so here are the base colors laid down and I can start making it more interesting. The first step, ammo shaders. Well, I wanted to layer multiple shaders over each other, but I wasn't very happy with the results. Thankfully, it was on the opposite wall that's gonna be hidden, so I went back to my verified approach and only used grime to outline every small detail. Bolts, rivets, hinges, that sort of stuff. Most of the heavy lifting will be done using pinwashes, which will work nicely together with this airbrushed outline. But it's just not about that. They're excellent for creating controllable shadow gradients. Since we're painting an interior, this could be considered a shadow cast in the corners of the tank, or simply a grimy, dirty residue on the walls. It's much easier and looks smoother on the green floor, and here I could also get away with heavier intensities. Again, creating shadows in the corners, outlining details and the large floor panels. It looks much more three-dimensional, doesn't it? An excellent opportunity to put the airbrush away and grab some paintbrushes and, let's say, enamel paints this time. Yeah, enamels, because I was too excited and I didn't want to wait for the oils to drain. But it's cool, both mediums do the job properly. Besides, I wanted to use this dedicated interior wash for the longest time because of its grayish green color. I think it could work perfectly on a tank in a winter camouflage as well. Might give it a nice, dirty, cold look. By the way, the ammo shaders tend to dry into a glossy finish, so before I started this treatment I gave all surfaces a quick coat of VMS flat varnish. Washes behave differently on flat, satin and glossy surfaces, and a flat coat is usually considered the most difficult and user-unfriendly for pinwashing, but as you can see in these examples, it's nothing terrible. If anything, it helps the wash create subtle staining and initial weathering. Streaking rime was used on the darker surfaces. Again, oils or dedicated washes would be fine, but I found this color perfect for the dull green floor. And because it's formulated differently than a regular wash, it's also very easy to create large stains. These can be once again used to add further contrast between panels, and they can also act as an initial sketch, let's say for the upcoming weathering layers. Every detail is valuable when you're painting an interior, especially the smallest ones, so I grabbed pure white acrylic paint and carefully picked out every bolt and rivet. The airbrushed shaders made them darker, and the pinwash tends to creep up those surfaces as well, making them even darker. Ultimately, you might end with dark stains instead of rivets, and this trick makes them pop and shine again. And because I was already messing around with acrylics, I also painted every detail in its respective color, mostly black, grey and brass for some of those hose fittings. So that's the interior ready for weathering. If you wanted a clean look, this could be just enough in my opinion. It's also more than enough if the insides are gonna be mostly hidden, but for demonstrational purposes, I'll add some very simplified weathering. Well, I'll start with the dark rust color, and this one is gonna be applied with the dry brushing method. The most obvious place to start, the floor pattern. That's why I didn't outline it with a pinwash. It would become way too dark after this stage. And because I didn't want to meticulously paint any chipping effects here, I used dry brushing for all the edges. And it works surprisingly well. And when it doesn't anymore, a sponge is always a valuable chipping tool. These metals tools for MG gunners lack any interesting surface details, so a heavier chipping texture is definitely gonna make them more interesting. And because it wouldn't be my model if there wasn't any rust involved, I added some corrosion over most of the chips. Rust inside the tank is pretty questionable, but I think not impossible. You might get water through an open hatch, even on a modern tank, right? But this tank has two huge ventilation openings on the roof, and I can only imagine how much dust, debris and rainwater must have gone through them. So yeah, I've successfully made an excuse for my rust effects. Now, as we're reaching the finishing line, I made a choice to divide the interior into parts that are gonna be seen and those that are completely irrelevant. There's just no point spending time on something that's never gonna be visible by anyone, and on the other hand, we can take it as a demonstration between weathering and no weathering, I guess. But first, it's time to fit some of those plates, permanently. Luckily, the kit is well engineered and everything fits without issues, but some heavier force is required if you don't want any large gaps between the armor sections. Once I was sure the fit was right, I carefully glued them together with small amounts of superglue. With that out of the way, I could start cluttering the fighting compartment. Some ammo canisters, which by the way looked exactly the same in World War I and II. Just like these grenades. I made both of these accessories on my 3D printer. The cushion chairs for the driver and co-driver are gonna be clearly visible, so I paid some extra attention to them. This is a prime example of when techniques and experience from different branches of this hobby are essential. I use the same methods I normally use on figures when I'm painting their shoes, belts and pistol holsters, just on a much larger surface. If I didn't paint figures, I'd probably give the leather cushioning a simple brown coat and added contrast with washes and dust tones. But this way, it looks more interesting, doesn't it? and although I didn't want to add any artifacts, I just knew it wouldn't be quite right without them. After all those points I made about the interior being rather exposed to the elements, it wouldn't make sense either, although I think it already had enough visual interest with the chipping and rust tones. But adding dust, mud and grime to a threaded floor pattern is one of the easiest tasks in the world, because the pattern does the blending for you, so to say. This otherwise intimidating process took only a few minutes, and I could add every tone with the wet blending method, meaning the previous layers weren't dry when I started applying the next effect. The results were quick, easy, and most of all, they look awesome. Not too bad. So that's gonna be it for tonight, my friends. It's the first time I painted an interior for a tank that's not blown up or something, and just as I expected, the techniques were mostly the same as on tank exteriors. The only thing worth keeping in mind is your effort to result ratio. If you want to go all in on detail painting and weathering, it might be reasonable to choose a vehicle with a huge opening in the roof or a large hatch, so your work is gonna be visible. I don't want to keep any panels on this model removable, so very little of this is gonna be visible in the end, but it was a learning experience and also a small demonstration on how one can paint an interior. Again, I think in some cases just basic colors and a pin wash are gonna be enough. For example, this front section is only gonna be visible through a small vision slot. Overall, I did a rather quick job. If the insides would be more visible, I'd add spent shell casings, some natural debris and loose dirt, all kinds of stuff to make it as detailed as possible. But for our purposes with this model, it should be just enough. So I hope you found this video helpful, or at the very least interesting to watch, and in the next episode I'll construct a diorama for this tank, and then it will be ready for painting and weathering. In the meantime, thank you for watching, my friends, and thank you to my patrons who make this show possible. If you like what I'm doing, want to get more of it, and in return support my work, you can go to my Patreon page and see what kind of rewards would you like. I'm posting there almost every day with updates from my workbench. We can get in touch through DMs, comments, and emails. I'm posting 1 week early ad-free videos, so you could watch the diorama video right now, and also these beautiful studio photos, and download them in full resolution, and last but not least, some real-life references for dioramas, sceneries, and landscapes. And, of course, small 3D models for detailing your tanks and dioramas, if you have a 3D printer. Alright, this was again something new for me, and I had fun. Interior models are not so bleh for me anymore, so maybe there will be another one in the, distant future. We'll see, okay? But first, I've got other work to do. And you, my friends, stay safe, stay awesome, build your models, don't just collect them, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!